What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Play the Fights on College Football show. Another off-season week in college football is upon us, and we have a great coaching topic to cover tonight. As you can tell, it's a little lighter in the studio for now. JP is on his way to, I believe, the Des Moines airport to drop the significant other off. He will be joining the show later, but Jake is here, and tonight the main topic is we're going to talk first-year impact coaches in college football. This could be any coach that's landing in a new spot. Making a move to a school from a lower tier school, just changing over. But anyone that's going to make an immediate impact in their first year, either as a head coach, and I believe coordinators are on the table. We'll get to that later in the show. But first, we want to start off with hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button. We are still on the way to 1,000. I believe around the 860 mark over on YouTube. Let's get there. So hit that like and subscribe button. We love you and appreciate you being here. If you're a recurring guest or a recurring viewer, we love you even more. Jake, how are we doing tonight? We ready to talk a little bit of recent news is pretty heavy tonight, but coaching at the end of the show.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad we got to refresh this because it's just kind of a good reminder as we are probably a lot of our viewers and just a lot of Americans are completely nosedived into March Madness right now.
Yep.
But this is a good refresher to kind of remind us that spring practice is going on, spring ball is going on. It's around the corner. And you kind of need a reminder of who coaches who, because I know I kind of did when I had to go back and kind of do my research on like who's even coaching, who are some of the new coaches in college football this year. I did not know that the coordinators were on the table. But
yeah, I didn't have them on my list. I don't know if JP wanted to include them, so I'm okay if we leave those off. Obviously, there's a lot more movement coordinator-wise, especially after last season. But head coaches, we should be able to cover a majority of them and what their outlook is going to be. JP, like I said, will join later in the show. But let's start off with a first little side topic of the hatred of snow. We cover that pretty often here, especially with me on the show. Did you guys get drilled up in there?
No, so I live up in the Great White North, and as far as I know, I'm the only one who didn't get snow. We got zero, absolutely none.
Dude, I think we got like 6 or 7 inches. Like with 90-mile-an-hour winds, full blizzard. Yep. I went to shovel today, which is top 5 worst things to have to do. Dude, it was like the heaviest snow of all time too, like the thick, wet, sticking snow. I have one. It's from 1988. I got it gifted to me from my father-in-law. And he's like, I haven't started it up in years. And he's cranking this son of a bitch. I mean, he's pulling the thing like 90 times to get it started. So to me, is it easier to get that thing started? But no, just a short shout out to the snow. I still hate you. Worst thing ever is shoveling. So I'm glad you missed it. And I believe JP said it's just supposed to rain over in Iowa.
No, like Central
Iowa?
Central Iowa? West Central Iowa. So like my parents sent me a video of like they got like almost a foot, and they can't see out their windows because the wind is, like you said, it's blowing so hard. And we don't. It melted. All the snow we even had melted last week. It's kind of, this is new for me. I kind of feel like I live in Arizona for a week.
I was eating dinner outside last night. It was 65 and sunny, and a little warm to it, maybe a little chill, sweatshirt, just sitting on the deck on the patio, having a cocktail, eating dinner, and then all of a sudden, 3 hours later, it's like the wind's whistling through your windows. Just absolutely the worst. Shout out to the Midwest. It's a different lifestyle here. With that, let's go into the first topic we always cover. These have been fun. The question of the day. We want to hear your interaction and hear your thoughts. Our boy GA is already in the comments. I'm going to throw that question up later, GA, about Bill Belichick over at North Carolina. He's definitely going to be featured in this, I'm sure. But the question of the day today, let's lead it off. And obviously, I'll let you answer first, Jake. But who is your favorite under the radar, maybe not well-known star in college football growing up? One I want from your team, Iowa State, and another just in general college football. Let's start off with your Iowa State one.
Yeah, Iowa State one. If we have any Iowa State listeners tonight, the name Atuba Rubin, ring a bell? Like 06, 07 defensive tackle. I'd say Parks, you probably never heard of him, honestly. I mean, he was on some poor Iowa State teams, a JUCO guy, but ended up getting picked in the 6th round, and he played 10 years in the league. I mean, he started pretty much every game up until like his 8th season in the NFL. I think that went really under the radar. I don't think people expected him to have that long of a career, but you know, the Iowa State football pro history doesn't run super deep. And this is one of the most successful Cyclones to ever make it in the NFL for a really good career, to be honest with you. His biggest stint was probably with the Browns for about, I think it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. And then he went to Seattle for a couple of solid years. But he was good for Iowa State. Unfortunately, those teams like with Blythe and Meyer were some more popular names, but they just never really put it together. But he was a good JUCO guy when they picked him up. But I was like, yeah, that's a good name that brought back some good memories.
I would definitely count that as under the radar, considering you could have made that name up. That sounds incredibly insane, but it's a fair pick nonetheless. Any other Iowa State guys that maybe didn't take the top spot, but you were kind of following that weren't known? I guess a majority of them because of the years they had too, right?
Yeah, no, if we're getting super, I think this guy was also a JUCO guy. If we're getting super in the weeds, Quentin Bundridge, he played receiver, probably, I think it was, God, I want to say it was 13 and 14 was back then when some of those horrible Paul Rhodes years, but he was awesome. He was one of my favorites to watch. It's hard because like you're naming some guys like when you were a teenager or maybe when you were a younger kid, you obviously like idolized these guys and loved them a lot more. It's kind of hard to like, I mean, there's some good under the radar guys the last 5 years in the Campbell era, but it's like it just means more when you're a kid, even when those teams weren't very good.
Yeah, but when it's like the era that you can, not feel weird standing outside for an autograph, like that era of under the radar player.
Wear their jersey. I don't know. What's your you probably you don't have a Nebraska jersey, do you?
I have multiple Nebraska jerseys. Obviously, now there's options that we didn't have as children to have their names on them and they actually get paid for them, but we had the number options. I did receive, I got to come clean about this, a Christmas gift this year, and it is a Dylan Raiola like sweatshirt from China. Got like the winning tradition patch that looks AI generated. It's got his name embroidered on the back, so I guarantee you he didn't receive a dime from it because it's DH Gate written all over it. And I wore it during the bowl game, but I do not believe I'll ever wear it out of the house just because like that kid's 6, 7 years younger than me now.
Especially now that they're actual jerseys you can get their names on them and everything. Like they used to just have like Nebraska and it'd just be the number 1. It's usually how they did it for a while.
But back when we were kids, that's what they got in trouble for. Is remember like let's say not they would sell a number 4 Iowa State jersey, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one. So but then
they made
after that they went to like 1, just like generic 1 from like 2010 to 2018. Anyways, now they can actually get their names on it. I just think it's kind of odd when I see guys like 40 years old and wearing jerseys. It's never been my thing. I mean, to each their own. Just I've never been a huge fan.
I'm kind of running into that. We're at that weird age where you're running into it in all sports too. Like I'm a big hockey fan, and some of the sweaters is what they call their jerseys, by the way, I own are for players like my favorite players, but they're professionals, right? Like making millions of dollars, but even some of them are younger than me. And so I'm like, is this weird? Like, I don't know if this is weird or not. So you got to walk that fine line at the age we're at, but also jerseys are pretty cool. So you got to accept whatever people throw at you. And I'm not mistaken, Jake, did you not buy an Oklahoma State jersey off a kid's back in a bar last year, like 2 years ago? No, I'm sorry. That was probably 5 years ago now.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a while ago. I mean, I was in college, but that was more like everybody had one. And again, it was a generic number 1 jersey, no name on the back before NIL. And I was just like set on maybe it was like the salesman in me. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this off somebody tonight for $20, and they're going to give me an $80 jersey for $20. Found the right kid who just maybe had a little too much to drink that night that was willing to do that.
That's the move. You just got to find a kid that looks like he's on a different planet, like just teetering on the brink of Irish goodbying just because of his stomach. It's like, that's the move right there. That is a salesman in you. But all right, let's hear your pick for, go ahead, finish that first.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's like college kids, $20. He's probably like, shit, that's 4 drinks for the rest of the night. What a sucker.
Yep. Or $20 on red when we leave this bar. Like there's many possibilities you're running through your head in college. But let's hear your general college football pick for your favorite under the radar player growing up.
I really struggled to come up with one. I don't know. Maybe I was just trying to go too broad, or I was trying to maybe get like a super niche pick. I went with Ian Johnson, running back out of Boise State.
He's a great
one. Thank you. He was the one that scored on the Statue of Liberty for Boise. Now, I more so started paying attention to him when basically after that
Proposed to his
play.
girlfriend too, Jakey.
Yeah, yep. Didn't pan out in the NFL. I really thought he was going to, but that's just like a core memory of a guy who, like, you see that happen when you're a kid, and then you just want to mimic him when you're running around the backyard and just pretend like you're Ian Johnson for the rest of your childhood. So that was one. I don't know. I want to hear more of yours because I couldn't pick one that I was like super locked into. Crabtree, maybe Crabtree was a big one for
Crabtree's
me.
a good one.
But you said off the radar. I don't know if I throw Crabtree. I mean, he's still a college football legend to me, I think.
You could honestly say that about Mahomes. You could probably say, I mean, he was not Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech that he is now. So I would accept that.
Those teams were bad too. I don't know. If Patrick Mahomes didn't become Patrick Mahomes, yeah, maybe he would be on this off the radar list from just his college days alone. I don't know. Who'd you pick?
I'll go with the general college football since we're on it. But one of mine that I cheered for, and I guess it was a little later in the time frame than probably childhood. I guess I was probably early high school when he was in his peak. But I really enjoyed watching LeGarrette Blount run the football and punch people in the face. Like I don't know why. I just thought they were good. He was really good. He was just that big body back, and everybody went through an Oregon phase. JP will tell you he never did, but like everybody was obsessed with the uniform.
The running backs,
11 to 12 years old. The DeAnthony Thomas, LeGarrette Blount's, like
Kenyon Barner.
I just thoroughly enjoyed.
Don't forget Kenyon Barner. That's an under the radar guy.
DeAnthony Thomas was one of my favorite guys to ever watch, but that's not under the radar to me. I feel like he was a national superstar in his time at Oregon. So I went with LeGarrette Blount, one of my favorites ever growing up. And then on the Nebraska side of things, I came up with two, one on the offensive side, one on the defensive side. Maybe you'll know him, Jake, because we used to tallywhack you guys with these guys. So Matt O'Hanlon on the defensive side of the ball played free safety. He was a Bellevue kid from Nebraska. 3 interceptions against Landry Jones against Oklahoma in a 10-3 win back in 2009 or 10 GA. Can double check me on that. One of the most fun games, the loudest game I've ever been to Memorial Stadium. But Matt O'Hanlon was he's kind of a hot topic in the Nebraska world. Some people think he was really good over his career or decent, and some people think he was just abysmal. I've heard it both ways, but I am a fan, and he was one of my favorite players.
Play guy. He was just going for the pick at all times.
Yeah, he missed a few tackles and took some brutal angles a few times here and there too. So he had some true Nebraska. He would really shine in today's day and age, Nebraska. But then on the offensive side of the ball, this one's a little bit of a fun story too, because hopefully I get to watch his son in a Nebraska uniform within the next couple of years. But Maurice Purify was a 6'6" receiver that Nebraska had, game-winning catch against Texas A&M back in the old Big 12 days. Pretty good receiver, but his son is like equal of size and said to be a better athlete overall. He's a 4-star wide receiver. Nebraska is recruiting pretty heavily. So hopefully we can get that legacy pickup and I can watch another Purify in a Nebraska uniform. But those would be the two. Do you know either of those names, Jake?
I don't, but
perfect. That's under the radar. That counts.
Then. That's a good pick. It just made me think of, there's a kid enrolling in Iowa State's class this year. He's a corner. LaMarcus Hicks is his name, and his dad was also LaMarcus Hicks. And it's like that was also kind of in that 05, 06 range where it's just like, holy crap, like we're going to be doing this. Also, we talked about jerseys. Are we now, our old legends, whether they had good careers in pros or college, are we now getting to the point where it's too many juniors? Like, I think it's kind of one of our topics for tonight that we'll get into for recent news, but like there are a lot of dudes who just like the junior thing is it's becoming too much. It's more like a legend, like a status thing, I think, for the dad.
Yeah. I feel like they're not in, or do you think they're in on the conversations as much as you think they would be? Like, I feel like most dads within the media, Nebraska has one that his son committed to Nebraska last year and is there now. Seems Damon Benning is a huge media personality. And he always talked about, like, I don't know where he's going. Iowa was on the table there. Iowa State was a big option for Caleb Benning, and Nebraska. And his dad was a backup running back on the national championship team. So everybody wanted him to come. He ends up coming to Nebraska, but he always stuck to his guns that, it was his decision. Is it really? Like, is the dad not in his ear within the Nebraska media and all the legacy there and being like, dude, no, you cannot go to Iowa? Like, as a father, I think I would be. Like, if he's got to imagine, like, if you're an Iowa State fan, no way you're going to be like, yeah, I think you have a better opportunity at Iowa. You just can't do it.
But just like, and the pressure you put on these kids too, like Bronny James, like I know he's not a junior, but like, come on, if your name is LeBron and you're naming your kid Bronny, I mean, it's just stuff like that. It's like, hey, no pressure or nothing, but from the womb, I was a Hall of Famer. I'm going to name you exactly my name, so people still remember my name when it's around. I think it's a weird move.
One of the coolest stories of all time, Bronny James is playing on the same court as his dad in the NBA. Earned? I don't know. With the output that he's got, I don't know if he's in Oklahoma. Let's go to JP's pick. He threw it in there. So JP's all-time growing up under the radar favorite player, Henry Josey, the running back from Missouri.
Yeah, I remember Henry Josey.
Yeah, I do too.
They put James Franklin on there too. There's a couple of good Missouri teams.
Yeah, and he was the quarterback at the same time. So that's a pretty good pull there. I'm not sure. Let's take a guess before he throws it in the comments. Maybe we should know this, but
black and gold team.
Yeah, black and gold team. Let's take a guess at JP's favorite Iowa player all the time. I believe it's Brad Banks. Am I wrong?
Of all time, it's Brad Banks, but under the radar, I'd be better catching a name from Iowa than I would be, honestly, from Nebraska, unless it's super niche. But he says Brad on.
Yeah, I knew that, JP. Look at that. That's good friendship. Good co-host right there.
But it's all time. We're doing under the radar. The Brad Banks is not.
I don't know if I think you could consider him that. I don't know if outside of the country or outside of the Midwest, people would know that at our age.
Okay, if you're talking to like a circle of Hawkeye friends, it's
everybody. Yeah.
But if you're like, sure, if you're doing just like some random Joe Blow, even to me, I think Brad Banks is a terrible pick. It'd be like me picking Brock Purdy or Seneca Wallace. Like I did an under the radar Iowa State name that pretty much those are the only two names the public knows. So
that's fair. I don't know what his second pick would be. Maybe Mark Wiseman. Remember the old Wiseman for Heisman days?
Wiseman's a good one. I feel like
I don't know if you couldn't put him in under the radar, right? Like they were begging for him to be at that Heisman ceremony.
Oh, he's Abdul Hodge. That name sounds familiar. He wasn't I think he was a corner. JP,
that's made up. That's generic. He just asked AI to make one up.
Was Abdul Hodge, was he a cornerback? I think I'm right. I think I'm right in this one.
Is that the one that he pitched it on the Michigan State interception? Same cornerback?
No.
Or am I far off on that?
I'm thinking this guy was like 05, 06, 07.
JP's favorite under the radar Hawkeye is Cooper DeJean, everyone. That's what he put in the chat.
Speaking of which, is he going to get off YouTube and join the stream, or what are we doing here?
I don't know. He's in the comments. He must be speeding on his way home. Please drive safely, Jordan. We will see when you get here, but we appreciate you throwing in to the chat so you didn't miss our question of the day segment. But that is all we had for question of the day. Drop your favorite under the radar player for both your team and college football growing up in the comments if you're watching this on replay. And reminder to hit that subscribe button before we move on to recent news, which we are going to do right now. But before we do that, let's talk No Rivals. ShopNoRivals.com. Use the code PTFS at checkout for all your free shipping on premium collegiate headwear. New designs coming, a lot of new teams. This is going to be a big year for No Rivals with us. So we appreciate them, and we appreciate you checking them out today and using the code PTFS at checkout. The elite caps in college football lie within that website URL. So shopnorivals.com today. Shout out them. Shout out you for shopping them. Love No Rivals. All right, let's go on to recent news. Let's start with a fun one. Donovan McNabb Jr., so Donovan McNabb's son, is possibly going to play for Mike Vick over at Norfolk State. We just talked about players and influencing their kids. This could be pretty interesting because apparently he's pretty good. His dad was an all-time quarterback in the NFL. But what do you think about this possibility? Would that be kind of cool? Something, you know, a Norfolk State quarterback standing out, being in the national spotlight because of his name and his coach now?
I want to confirm. I want to confirm if he's a quarterback. I think
Is he not? I could be
I think
wrong.
he I think he might be a receiver. And this is why, I mean, you're getting raw, you're getting raw live, us looking this up kind of thing. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
that's
he's a
bad
receiver.
podcasting. That's on us. See,
No,
don't talk
that's
shit in the
that.
comments. That's
Yeah,
unacceptable for me not to look further into that.
no,
I figured he was a
6 foot.
quarterback, right?
No, he's a receiver. And as far as right now, I mean, from everything that I've seen, he's picked up offers from. I forgot Iowa State did offer him. I thought I knew that. Iowa State offered him. Florida Atlantic offered him. Minnesota, Arizona. I mean, he's not even like he's like a fringe 3-star, so it's nothing crazy. But I mean, yeah, he would be an excellent pickup for Norfolk State because if a Power 4 school is offering you and you go to an HBCU, it's a pretty good pickup. I don't know. I think that if you have Mike Vick there and you have your NFL ties, I mean, this is just more prone to happen. Just like Dion was when he was at Jackson State, he was able to pick up the number one player in the country. Now, I don't think Vick has as much, what do you want to call it? As
Pull.
much, pull, I guess, as much moxie as Mike Vick does at this point. But I mean, you see what Eddie George is doing right now, and who knows? You hope a guy like Mike Vick can maybe stay at an HBCU if they're trying to build that brand up, and you can steal kids more like 3-stars like McNabb. But yeah, it goes back to my point. You hear these names, it's like, holy cow, like we're getting that old.
Yeah. And I feel like the reason I want to include it in recent news is I feel like as we get more of these former superstar players or elite college football players or elite NFL guys, we're going to get, you know, the offspring of their friends and former teammates that are going to be looking into their school. Like you have Eddie George now at Bowling Green. Are they more likely to get some of Eddie George's former teammates' kids? Like anybody throughout the time, all of a sudden now they're in the conversation of going to play for their dad's old buddy because they trust in what they can do and know their connections to the NFL and bigger schools if it were to ever come to that. So I just think it's something maybe to keep an eye on within college football and would be a fun thing to watch nonetheless if Michael Vick can turn Donovan McNabb's star receiver son into something at Norfolk State, sort of like Travis Hunter did his first year at Jackson State. So good mention there. Let's go down the line. Let's talk American. The American Conference has set in stone their revenue share percentage. If you're not familiar with revenue sharing, all colleges must share a percentage of their revenue with their athletes. Bigger schools require bigger numbers. Obviously, at the group of 5 level, the American has decided $10 million over 3 years to be dispersed to their student athletes, not including Army and Navy because they do not opt into NIL at the service academies. But the other schools must split $10 million over 3 years, and that can be up to them. It can be 5 in the first year, 3 in the second year, and 2 in the third and final year if they want to, or it can be a different number, start small, get bigger over time with inflation, whatever it may be. But 10 million is that number. Does that sound like enough, Jake? Because that is split between sports as well, that 10 million over all student athletes.
Okay, that was going to be my first question. Is this is not just football. This is every single sport. I mean, I don't know. I didn't look a ton into this. 10 million for every single sport. I mean, that seems around a decent ballpark of what an American school makes. Like we were talking the other night, what Iowa State's budget was around 3 million for its NIL for a football program. So if you disperse, even you give your football program a million and a half for say Florida Atlantic, I think that's still good punching weight ability to produce in that conference because the basketball team's not going to need a bunch more. And really, like, I don't know the Title IX rules of all this, and I don't want to be that guy, but like, are we really giving what's the girls' soccer team taking?
Yeah, percentage of revenue.
What's even the baseball team taking? It's not just girls' sports. Like, we're doing it between the top 2, and then after that, give $500,000 to the rest of the, I don't know, 12 sports on campus.
I don't think it's crazy because a lot of these smaller schools in the G5 football pays for those other sports to exist. through away games against Power 4 schools. So if you give them 70% of this $10 million over the 3 years, it's not dumb because those other sports literally would not be able to function without football being successful and being competitive, at least within the conference. And that's just where I see it. So we'll see where it goes from there. But definitely a brief note I wanted to mention as we see those numbers released. JP, any thoughts? JP's joining the show. We'll let you defend your Brad Banks and Jake argument after this. But what do you think on the American? You think 10 million is enough?
I think you have to put a number down so people make sure they're locked into it, right? If you can hear me, I'm using my AirPods. Just let me know.
We're calling.
We can hear you. Yeah, welcome to the radio show, 6 a.m. That's what it sounds like.
Does it sound like a radio show? I have AirPods in because we're scrambling. You have to put a number down for those institutions that aren't known for putting money into athletics, especially football. So they're not just cashing checks and kind of bringing your conference down, right? So American Tulsa, that's a school that, not known for throwing money around openly.
I'll say, not to cut JP off, but Tulsa came out and said, the guy who got fired last year, he's like, we don't have NIL. We have no money here. What did he say? Didn't he say?
Yeah, he was he said somebody wanted to bring their dogs and their girlfriend, and how much money were they going to pay him? They said, we got no money. Get rid of the dogs and try and cheap out the girlfriend. We don't have money.
He acronymed NIL for something else, and it was hilarious. I cannot remember what he said.
That is a good call.
That was my question. It's you're not going to win the fight. So what are you going to use if you're those? Because we're a football show, what are you going to use that $1 million for in the first year? Are you going to just try to pay your quarterback $100,000 and maybe he's like a second team, third team all conference guy, and you hope maybe a Power 4 team doesn't find him? Because the minute he calls, he's gone. But right now it's just you want to just still be able to give those kids that opportunity to pay them, because it is college football. They're still on a national stage. They're still playing on national TV and stuff like that. It's just kind of what's the money actually going for? Because it's not keeping kids away from going to bigger places.
I think it could be. I think if you maybe split even percentage salary style to 85% of whatever you get for football per se, maybe that other 15% tucked away so you can be competitive. You have a kicker that goes 45 for 47 and tries to go to Alabama and be like, no, we'll give you an extra $75,000 to stay here. So maybe it does help them to be competitive when they're trying to get fleeced. Now, the collective money and the revenue sharing dollars at those bigger schools is going to make it nearly impossible. So you're probably right, Jake, but it could maybe lead to somebody sticking around like a Ricky White situation. You never know, but let's leave that there. Let's move it down on recent news. But before we do that, let's talk to JP. JP, any defense for Jake calling Brad Banks not under the radar, or would you say maybe you can agree with that?
I heard what's my favorite of all time, and you guys said confirm it, so I confirm Brad Banks is my favorite of all time.
Okay, that's fair.
Under the radar, Abdul Hodge, opposite linebacker at Greenway, is a big Abdul Hodge fan. That's the same team, by the way, in the year for the Hawks.
I like Chad Greenway too, former Viking.
Who's the
running back?
Micah Hyde, but
who's the running back in 07?
Sean Green. You think 09 Sean Green?
No, you're before him. He was he was a stud on college football.
Big fan.
Albert Young.
Yeah, there you go.
21.
Yeah.
I think my favorite Hawkeyes
never heard of her
are not under the radar. That'd be your Desmond Kings, Brad Banks, Micah Hyde,
Riley Moss.
Under the radar, that is. Riley Moss is not one of my favorite Hawkeyes of all time. Love Riley Moss. He's great there.
I had no problem with Riley Moss. I actually liked him as a player. Obviously, he played for a team I hate, but then I saw he wore earrings and everything went out the drain, and I was like, I fucking hate this guy. That was just my final straw. You play for the worst team ever, and then
and he's a Bronco too, so.
Oh, yeah, he is a Bronco now. He went favorite team to favorite team. That's a good call.
And he played really well this year. Had a great year.
Yeah. Let's keep the NFL out of it, JP, but I like to mention there from comparing it to college. Let's go to a next point for recent news. Rich Rod over at West Virginia. I'll let Jake touch on this first since he went out to West Virginia this year and is friends with the majority of their fan base. He's banning TikTok dancing. This is a little bit of a fun topic to cover, but he went out and said in an interview, or I guess his weekly presser, he knows they're going to be on TikTok, so be it. He said, I'm not banning them from being on it. I'm just banning them from dancing on it. It's like, look, we try and have a hard edge or whatever, and you're in there in your tights dancing on TikTok. That ain't quite the image of the program I want. I can't say I disagree with him having a 5-star quarterback of my own team dancing on TikTok within the last couple of weeks, including the running back we're paying
in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean,
locker room.
Perform will have no problems, but those videos are going to really come back and bite the fan base in the ass through social media if we start off with some bad losses. So as long as things pan out, it should be okay. But any comments? Do you think this is just old school ball in Morgantown that he's trying to rebirth, or do you like it, Jake?
Are we going to try and comment on this without trying to sound like we're 70 years old? Like,
yeah.
Is there
I agree.
Is there an actual opinion we can make here? I don't.
There's cool, like, there's things you can do on TikTok that don't revolve like the trend dances. Like, you can make cool videos. I'm not saying you need to like pump an iron every time you post on TikTok, but you ain't gotta be. I'd rather you lip sync to Avril Lavigne than do some of the TikTok trend dances out there.
I enjoy the guys that do like a day in the life and they record their day. I think that stuff's kind of interesting. Obviously, we're washed up NAIA players, so like to see a guy throughout his day do a D1 life routine is kind of cool. I mean, it's interesting. We've never seen into the more access, the better, right? But like, yeah.
What's the biggest difference you see in those? This is just a little sidebar, but mine's always the training tables, right? Like when they go to eat and it's like chicken noodles, and then we would roll up to the calf. You don't get that in the NAI. You just eat at the normal student cafeteria. We'd walk in and be French fry bar with French fries, chili fries.
Or how about they go, we got some downtime between classes, so I keyed over to our player performance center, and we had our 60-inch screen playing Xbox. We had 4 TVs going. We were playing all that. Like, nope, didn't have that. Absolutely didn't have that.
Yeah, we did. We
Honestly,
went home.
It's no wonder their lockers are always a mess, because the gear they had in one run of like a gear run is more than I got in 4 years. So
yeah, that's true. They get them they call them Christmas in July. Like we had one quote unquote Christmas, and it was 3 of the cheapest dry fit t-shirts you could find, maybe a pair of shorts, maybe a long sleeve if you're feeling lucky. One time we got winter coats. That was a big deal.
We could do I wonder if we could do an episode of like
NAIA versus D1.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, if anybody would be interested, just being like giving stories of like what it's like to be just a washed up, paying $30,000 for, playing JV level baseball, basketball, football, you name it. Because it ain't like,
don't put JP and I on that. We didn't do
that. I
know
you guys were big. You guys were big studs, winning conference championships and stuff. Oh, they didn't do that either. But yeah,
all right, well, let's go back quickly. I want to know J Bird in the comments, recurring listener. So we always got to put him on the show and shout him out. You know this name, Tim Dwight? I assume this is a former Iowa offensive lineman.
No, all-time receiver.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said including some of the linemen. I'm just trying to go through context clues. I don't know what you're talking about.
JP, you should start talking through your laptop. It might sound better. But
okay, like 2 seconds.
I was gonna say,
or get the mic. Just hop off and get the mic. I don't think anybody would be hurt by that.
Tim Dwight played in the Arena League towards the end of his career, I think. But he had
the real one, the AFL.
Yeah, but he had a solid little NFL career. I think he played with the Chargers, the Jets. This was like late '90s Hawks. JP, go ahead. Try to speak.
Do I sound any better through the computer?
You sound the same.
It sounds just like Reese from Syria level bad. Shout out Reese. We miss you. But keep going, Jake. Tim Dwight, he played wide receiver at Iowa.
Yeah, he was more of like a return specialist of anything. But yeah, he was probably an all-time Hawk, I think, for at least JP would probably account to that. I can't say that I know his entire career off the top of my head, but Jay Bird says he played with the Falcons too. But yeah, he had a solid little NFL career. I do want to put a pin on this TikTok thing, or just maybe the Rich Rod comments in general.
All right. Last time we're bouncing around a little bit tonight. Sorry, everybody. We're out of sorts. JP joined slates, but putting a pin in this. Talk to us about
it's March Madness. It's the off season. This is what we do. I like it a lot, honestly. I think a lot more coaches need to do this. I think we're so far on the other side of like the player empowerment stuff where we're so afraid to step on kids' toes and make them upset. So God forbid a coach can tell them, hey, maybe we don't just like publicly show our locker room off and just do some stupid dance and post it on social media. Like maybe we just try to keep one thing private in our lives. You know, God forbid, we've had numerous like college athletes get Snapchat screenshot, blast those all over social media, getting exposed. Like, I don't know. We've gotten so far the other way. I think we need to help some of these kids try and realize like, hey man, let's just like stay off social media a little bit because you have millions of people chirping you when it comes game day and you drop a ball or something.
We can recap this back to the NAIA conversation we just had, because I don't know if JP's ringing the bell here, but we had this hit a little bit close to home when we first started this show together, all three of us plus Reese. It was called It's Just Money. It was a sports gambling focused show. We were college idiots talking
good gambling advice.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad content, like the worst. And we had our coach over at Morningside tell us, you know, we shouldn't be a part of it or to keep it off of our pages. Like, just keep it a little bit separate from our baseball lives, keep our faces out of it. Like, he doesn't care if we do it. But in a very similar fashion, basically told us to stop doing it. And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, I can see maybe why sports gambling isn't maybe the angle you want all your players to have their face on. So do you remember that, JP? In the time we were like, this is dumb. Like, we're having a great time. We're losing bets. Like, we're college idiots. But now looking back, very similar situation to Rich Rod. So
probably
shout out Morningside in West Virginia. Yeah, absolutely not. But all right, let's move it down. Go ahead, JP. Final comment
I would
there.
say Timmy D played for the Falcons as well. Had a kick return in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But Timmy, was a little earlier for me to like say he was one of my favorite Hawkeyes of all time. You know, I'm thinking people I'd watched play as I grew up.
Yeah, what was he? Was he like 95? 96?
Yes, because 96, 97 would have been the Super Bowl he played in with the Falcons against the Broncos.
Those are great years.
Yeah, Tim Dwight was like the original Cooper DeJean, from my understanding, in the state of Iowa, as like a high school athlete, and then like his build, and then going to the University of Iowa, and just being like, how does this kid grow up? He grew up in Iowa City, so it's a little different than Odebolt, Iowa, but just a small town Iowa kid, just being a freak athlete is just not something you hear all the time.
I wish we could flash back to that exact time frame, that 95 to 97, and just put our teams where they were at then in that situation. I'm not sure who was good back then, but that would be ideal for my mental health. Let's go on to the last point of recent news. Deion came out and said, hey, spring games getting canceled. He doesn't love it. He wants to do a pro-style practice week where you practice with another team for 2 or 3 days, and then you scrimmage. And whether that scrimmage can be televised or not is great, but he thinks that is more beneficial for the league to kind of adapt to that pro style. Fran Brown responds via X and says, hey, Deion, we'll come out there for 3 days. Syracuse, Colorado being pitched. What do you think about this idea? Obviously, that would be cool. It's awesome for Fran Brown to respond. I don't know if I've ever seen him put out something that isn't awesome in his time at Syracuse. But what do you guys think of this idea? JP, I'll let you go first. Do you like the idea of the team practices against other teams and then televising a scrimmage?
I had never thought about the idea of 3 days. I thought about
it's like in Hard Knocks, right?
Yes, yeah. I thought about the spring game, but my thought with the spring game was always buy games, right? So you don't go ACC, Big 12, you go ACC, Conference USA, ACC, Missouri Valley team come in, right? So it is an intriguing concept. My whole thing with it is that is somebody going to act too big for their britches? Like, is somebody like one of the SEC schools going to be like, we're not bringing a Big 12 team out here. We're not bringing
that's fine.
One of these teams. Like, it just, I feel like there's going to be some under the radar politicking going on during all that in that situation, right? It feels off. The SEC schools aren't going to want to bring in other SEC schools, right? They're not going to want to bring in their rival. They're not going to want to pay anybody. They're going to be like, well, you got to come to us. You got to do that. I just feel like there would be some politics that goes on with it that I'm not a huge fan of. But the idea of getting somebody else for your spring game, I think, is very smart in some ways. Yeah, Colorado School of Mines, that would be awesome team. Logo, by the way,
great.
That they
they're
have
good
out there.
D2 team. They're like top 10 every year.
Yeah, it's a cool concept. I really do think it'd be awesome for the sport. I just don't know if it's going to end up being you definitely won't do somebody in your conference. I would like it if we're worried about adding a conference game in certain conferences and the season getting too long, rather axing one of those bye games in the fall and putting that in the spring is where my head is.
Well, they don't even need to like fully go all out like game style. Like you're telling me that you couldn't do like a 3-day practice and then Iowa State opens it up to the public to have a live scrimmage. It's not a game, a live scrimmage at their state. And they're hosting UNI, for instance, if you want to keep it local. You're telling me people will be like, oh, it's not a real game. I'm not going. I totally don't want to watch my
People would
team
go to that.
compete. Exactly. So it doesn't need to be a real game. They don't need to be going to the ground completely. Like it doesn't need to be full-fledged, hard-hitting stuff. I mean, we just like get something different. I mean, the fights, guess what? You keep that in
Some
between.
of the best clips from
Yeah.
like the
Hard
fall
Knocks.
games for the NFL. Yeah.
And that stays private in those 3 days of the practices. But when it comes
Nothing's
to scrimmage
private nowadays,
time,
buddy. You
Yeah.
get a tussle, somebody's got it on camera.
It's also
college
it
teams
might
are
not
really good
be
at keeping.
wanted to be private. Like these things could be a media
Which is
like
also fine.
conglomerate's idea of being like, I'm going to go shoot Hard Knocks with Notre Dame for 4 days and make a 5-part documentary out of the 4 days, and including the scrimmage, and give you a look in. Like a lot of these teams, Notre Dame, Oregon, Nebraska does it, where they do inside looks throughout the entire season of the week of practice, team meetings, like everything's media. I mean, look at Dion and what they've done with his kid. I feel like this would be a huge media thing to get more money for everybody.
He was also the one to do the big spring game where like they sold out. Like it was a real thing on ESPN and they made it a whole. Yeah, I know. Roll your eyes, Park.
That had only to do with the concept of it. Had nothing to do with like he didn't sell that. That was the
but he
media
was
company,
pushing
CN
but
Prime doing. Yeah, he was pushing for a
for
spring
it, like-
game, and yeah, it's that whole
like,
shebang. But
the eyes on me, and he's kind of doing the same thing again. It's like, hey, we're doing something different. Like we're making this a whole event. We're making this a big thing.
I can't imagine
wanna-
he's the only coach to think about it. He might be the first
No,
one to vocalize
no,
it heavily.
Yes, that is my point. I'm saying if he's going to be the guy who does it again, and I think from what I've seen, he's talking to Belichick, which I'm sure Belichick's all about it because he's an NFL guy. He's done this a million times. So to see those two, I mean, you put it on ESPN, and even if it's not a real game, like it's still going to just blow up in ratings, and people are going to be all over it. And to JP's point about the politics of it all, screw them. Leave this open. Leave this an open option for everybody. If you don't want to do it, fine. But I guarantee once you see people start doing it and the benefits of it happening after 4 or 5 years, everybody's going to want to get on it in some sort of capacity.
Every network's going to want to grab it too, because that's kind of the time of year spring football rolls around. You get the televised ones, but maybe you're not interested in watching an in-time practice, but people are fiending for football. I mean, you're reaching for the UFL and the CFL at that time of year. You're telling me you wouldn't turn on a North Carolina versus Colorado scrimmage? Get the fuck out of here.
Heck,
Like,
man,
that would
it'd
huge.
be a hell of a way to raise NIL funds, throw events around it. Find a way to broadcast it yourself at the school and make more money that way. Like there's ways around
who
it.
says it has to be broadcasted? Like
Nobody.
They're
It's
gonna
the
want
other schools, but there would be, like Parks is saying, networks wanting to buy that.
Right.
They'd be fiending
And
for
you're
it.
going
And
to
I
tell
think
them. My whole point is they wouldn't tell them no.
people forget that, like, when Dion got hired at Colorado, I believe their AD's name is Rick Barnes. Somebody can double check me on that, but he was like fiending for money from any asset he could get it from to pay his salary. Like they did not initially have the money to pay his salary. So I think any sellout or any money being thrown at that program benefits, one, his former children's Rolls Royces. They would get parking tickets out front. Like there's more money floating around Colorado, and they're pushing for every outlet they can get it from because they didn't have that financial situation beforehand. Not that Colorado's a broke state. It's probably one of the more rich states, but I mean, he needs the funds for his own salary too. Let's leave that there. Let's go to the point of tonight's episode as we are 45 minutes in. This is what you came for. This is what we're here to talk about. But let's talk coaches. These coaches are in line or have a chance to have a standout season at the first year with their school going into the 2025 college football season. JP, I'll let you go first. Name a name. tell us why you think this guy
Mhm.
is in line to have a standout first year.
Standout first year could go in multiple different ways, right? I took it as it's going to be a night and day difference almost from the former regime, wherever you're at. I'll go kind of chalky here. How about Tim Albin going to Charlotte? I think that's a complete culture change. It's a coaching upgrade in just the strategy of it all and the team itself. The players are going to be better. The American is gettable in the middle of that conference, right? I think we usually see one or two, maybe three towards the top that kind of run the conference, but the middle to the bottom of that flips every year. And so there's a real shot here that Charlotte could find themselves bowling. And I'm not going to say they are for sure, but there's a real shot 6-7 wins is in the cards within the American when you go get a coach like that and you revitalize the whole program and what it is. So Tim Albert for me is a big one.
I like that pick.
I was just tack on JP's point. I think I've heard like Charlotte fans actually, even though it's a big metropolitan area, people care. Like they actually have a good fan base. And you got to think like it's a younger like school in Division One. I think they've only been around 10, 15 years. I think there's money there. Like, and you're in a big area where I think you have an opportunity to recruit at that level. I don't know. It feels like that's why they went and got this hire for Tim Albin, because I think they see they could strike a gold mine within the AAC if this works out.
All right, Jake, you're up. Give us your coach in line for a standout first year.
I don't know how many we'll name, but all of mine are Mountain West coaches to at least give you a hint or the heads
There's
up.
a big overhaul out there. That's fair.
There is. I'm just trying to decide which one I'll take first. We'll go with Matt Entz at Fresno. I think that has an opportunity to be big. He was out in California as the linebackers coach at USC last year. So now he's got a little bit of a lay of the land and can see where the recruiting lacks in the state of California and where they could maybe take advantage of it. If you guys don't remember where he came from before USC, North Dakota State, where he was there for numerous years, won national titles there. I just think he was after Kleiman, and this is a guy who he's kind of like rounded out in the March Madness sort of way. If he's like Ben McCollum at Drake, I think you get him from a smaller school. He's a born winner. I think he's going to figure out how to do it. And just like Charlotte and AAC, actually, it's not even like Charlotte. Fresno is a proven commodity in the Mountain West. It is one of the best fan bases there. It really is a good stadium where a lot of people do care, and they have produced good talent. They had Mikey Keene last year, and I think they were in my Mountain West title prediction last summer.
Incredible quarterback play through Fresno.
Yeah, right. And Devontae Adams, and like the list goes on and on. Just unforeseen circumstances last year, but I think that was a good roster, and I think Entz can take them back towards the top of the league once again, and I don't think it's going to take too much. Also, JP, just see who his tight ends coach is.
I did not.
Try Brian Ferentz.
Oh, that's right. I forgot he went out to California.
Yep. So he's
Can't
out there.
say I was keeping tabs on him.
Hey, he's building a veteran coaching staff. I got to give it to the guy. I think he's going to have a good first year.
All right, I'll give my first pick, and this one I'm going to stay in the Power Four for this one. I feel like it's also tough for me to make thumbnails for all these shows and not include some of my picks. You can probably take a guess. I'm going to stick in the center. Jake Dickert over at Wake Forest. How bad they were from, you remember the days of Sam Hartman when Wake Forest was 7-0, 6-0, playing in the spotlight. And you were like, this is awesome. They're great. How far they fell off when Notre Dame fleeced him was astonishing. This is just a bad ACC football team. In comes Jake Dickert, who's going to be a good coach for them. Top 20 in the last 2 years over at Washington State. He won 2 of the last 3 Apple Cups, and the one he lost to Washington was the year they played in the national championship. Like, this guy knows how to win against tough teams. Posted a 14-6 non-con record in his time at Washington State. And Washington State's a team that everybody kind of wrote off when they were kind of left in the middle of the pack too. So he still had John Mateer. He's recruited good athletes to his school. I think he can take a massive step forward from the piss poor ball Wake Forest has played and make them maybe a middle of the pack to maybe a shining star out of nowhere in the ACC this year.
Guys just burying Dave Clawson tonight. I thought Dave had some okay years there. I think
Dave's a miracle worker with what Wake has to offer. I think
Wake's a tough job.
It's a tough job, but at the same time, like, you bring in a young guy that's going to be way fired up to be a part of that program. I think that's
I agree.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I like it. I think this program can go somewhere and maybe get back to those 6-0, 7-0 start Sam Hartman days. At least revitalize it because I like the brand, and I think they can do some special things there. So that is mine. Back down to JP for your second pick.
Yeah, I'll go to the Mountain West here. I think this is a hire that it's kind of going under the radar. But when you see what he did at a school that's not prone to winning, like it's really hard to go win in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Bronco Mendenhall, Utah State. This is a Utah State program who's had good years in the 2010s and in the 20s. This isn't like we've been talking about a program that's been a cellar dweller in the Mountain West. No, this is a program that was really good for a while, kind of had a slow start in the last couple of years. And Mendenhall's a winner. He won at BYU. He was really good at Virginia for a while. Goes down to New Mexico. They go from zero to hero pretty quick. Now it's a different. You're not bringing Dampier with you to Utah State, but Mendenhall knows how to win the state of Utah, and that's a program with money, with resources, with a real fan base too. If we're being honest, like they weren't too many steps off last year.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a coach step down before the season, but I think this is a hire that can really make Utah State fight with a Colorado State, fight with a Fresno State. When Wyoming hopefully gets back up to the top end of that conference, like this is one of those schools that can fight for a shot to get into that title game every year.
That
I like
JP,
that
you
pick.
said it too. Like his success at BYU, like he knows the area. Like he's had success with recruiting. BYU's got a little more money now in the NIL space, but like there's not a huge difference between athletes you recruit in BYU and Utah State.
And one thing that I've learned, like just like visiting out to Utah a couple times, if you went to Utah State, like you're a Utah State fan. Like you might support some Utah things or some BYU things here or there, but like you're an Aggie. Like that's what you kind of do and that's what you support. So that's really cool because that's a program, like I said, with a hell of a following and is really used to winning in some ways in hoops and on the gridiron too.
Utah, they have underrated athletes. Like you wouldn't see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out in Salt Lake City and Utah in general now. There's some studs out there.
Jake, you're up. Next pick for your coach on the brink of an impact first season.
That was a good pick. That was 2 of my 3. So I'll just go. My last one was Bronco, and my last one's Dan Mullen. I just think the way he finished up at Florida is just kind of one of those things where it's really historically rich SEC school. They demand the cream of the crop, the best of the best. We'll see. Like maybe there was before Billy Napier turned it around at the end of last year. It was like, should we have fired Dan? Like we see him on ESPN. He's having this great time. He has these fun offenses, but did we make a mistake, pulling the trigger too early on him? So I really think Mullen still knows how to coach. And I think he's going to a place where there's a bunch of money, there's great resources, there's still good talent there, and he's going to bring his fun offensive scheme out to Vegas. And I think it's just the perfect fit for that league. We said it the other day. I know, Parks, you said this was last week. You said Barry Odom at Purdue was in one of your with Painter and Odom was one of the best duos of football and basketball coaches.
Potentially.
I'm out on the Barry Odom train. I think UNLV right now is one of the best, G5 programs out there. And I think almost anybody can win. And I would love to see what Dan Mullen can do. We brought in Alex Orji. Excited to see what he can do with a couple of quarterbacks there. But I think UNLV isn't going to skip a beat after Odom left for Purdue.
All right, I'll go to my next pick and final one because Dan Mullen was on my list. But let's talk a little bit. Everybody wants to probably mention him again in the cover of the episode. Bill Belichick over at North Carolina, right? Like you got some money to play with there. You're in the ACC. I think the football program is a couple steps behind where maybe people realize like nobody knows that they don't have club seating available at their football stadium. Fun fact maybe of the night for you.
Mm-hmm.
But they still have gotten guys from the transfer portal that have been interesting back in the Mac Brown days, like Max Johnson last year, who goes down in game 1 with an injury. If they can avoid big blowups like that and not have Jacoby Brisswell throw 19 interceptions against App State, like all of a sudden, here we go. Like North Carolina can be competitive again and find themselves in the top of the picture of the ACC. But like they got guys there like Omarion Hampton, who was the debatably top 10 running back in the country. So they have the ability to recruit and the money to do so. And now with the ties to the NFL, I feel like they can make a massive turnaround or at least get in the back of the top half of the ACC just in Bill Belichick's first year. What do you think about that, JP?
Yeah, confident, GA. I don't know about confident.
Confident.
But I think for me, it's like to win at North Carolina, you're going into a football school. There's money in Chapel Hill. But I just don't know. Like
you're going into a basketball school.
Yeah, basketball school.
Okay.
It's a tough job to win at and consistently win at. I think it's a school that can get the right ACC schedule and go win 9 games one random year or 10.
Yep.
But to say that he's just going to make them a top end ACC program, I just don't believe, because that's not a program or a fan base or a school that's shown that it's really bought in being that.
Yeah. Fair place to put it. Two opposite sides of the table. Where you land on Bill Belichick, Jake?
I'd have to go back and really check the roster, and obviously we'll do that in April and May probably May and June when they come out with magazines, and you're really after the spring portal and everything's closed, like to really know what he has in his hands for a roster next year. I'm not necessarily sure. Confidence is it's like a 1 out of 10 for me, because I think the ceiling could be pretty high, 9, 10 wins. But I think the floor could be as low as it gets, 3 wins. I really do think that, but maybe that's just me being skeptical on an old head football coach. But I don't think the guy forgot how to coach football. I know it's going to be a different change, but I'm pretty sure he didn't forget how to coach football. Once this March Madness stuff's over, it's going to be a big talking point. It's going to be like, is 7 wins a successful season for Bill Belichick? Right now in March, I would probably say so, but we'll just have to wait and see, honestly. Like, I really want to know what they have for a roster before I really see anything.
Yeah, and it's a fair point coming in here from Jay Bird that one thing about Bill Belichick is he does know how to win. Fair enough. That's also very fair place to put it. One of the best and most storied all-time coaches within the NFL. We'll see if it translates down to the college level. Any more names out there, JP? Did you have any more on your list?
I had one more, but it was one that I'm like, I think it's going to take a year or two. Dow Loggins at App. That's a program that cannot sit in the middle to the bottom of the Sun Belt. They won't accept it. And so you go get a guy who's a proven offensive coordinator, proven commodity at the pro level as an assistant. Hey, I mean, I think it's a good hire, because when App was good, look at those offenses and quarterbacks they had at the helm. In the running backs too, right? They had a lot of good running backs through the years. And so to go get an offensive-minded guy, I think helps him out a ton. But I do think App's like a year or two away. If he can go get set up and then find his way in the portal to go get guys who maybe bounce back or hit his stride in recruiting. So that's why I kind of left him out.
All right, there it is. That is our full list of coaches. Any honorable mentions that maybe people thought about putting on their list, or maybe just first-year guys that obviously I put Eddie George in there. I think Bowling Green had some obvious talent last year. Maybe the name can draw some more talent. They can be competitive in the MAC. They had one of the best tight ends / receivers in the country. Any other names that float around there, first-year head coaches you guys think can make a splash that you didn't put on your list but possibly could have?
No, honorable mentions, no. I thought,
I don't know. It's tough.
It's either you're not or you're just trying to compete, right?
Like I don't think Scott Frost is going to work in general. Like I've said that before.
That's a good one.
I don't think he's going to work. Rich Rod, wait and see. I do like Rich Rod as a coach, but I don't think he wasn't their third option. I don't think they really wanted Rich Rod all that much to come back, but maybe we'll see. We'll see what the expectations is of West Virginia. Like, if he wins 6 games his first year, are they going to be happy with that? Or it's kind of the same reason why Neil Brown got fired. So.
All right, there it is. That is our first-year impact coaches within college football in 2025. That was a good, most complete list. If you thought we left anybody off, drop them in the comments. Tell us why they're going to have a great first year. But we appreciate you joining us in tonight's show. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Check out our friends over at shopnorivals.com and use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all of your awesome collegiate hats and headwear. We love No Rivals, and we love you for being here. We'll see you next time. Jake, take us away.
March is here. Go Cyclones. Let's play it.